Welcome, brave souls, to a journey back in time. An era shrouded in mystery where diseases were as deadly as they were enigmatic. A time before modern medicine, where survival was a game of chance, and the stakes were life itself. Welcome back to Helpful Think, where today, we're venturing into the grim corridors of the Middle Ages, shining a light on the top 10 most horrifying diseases that plagued humanity. So brace yourselves, buckle up, and prepare for a wild, chilling ride through a chilling chapter of human history. Are you ready? Let's dive in. Ever wondered how lucky we are to live in an era of modern medicine? Consider this. During the Middle Ages, the Black Death wiped out 75 million people in just 4 years. Imagine a villain so sinister, so cunning, it hopped a ride from Asia to Europe on the back of fleas hitching a ride on rats. Now that's a hard-working harbinger of doom if there ever was one. This villain, of course, is none other than the bacteria Yersinia pestis, the cause of the Black Death. The symptoms of this dastardly disease were far from subtle. It started with fever, aches, and chills. But soon, victims developed buboes, painful swellings in the lymph nodes. These buboes were often accompanied by gangrene, causing the skin to darken, hence the name Black Death. The impact on society was cataclysmic. The population decreased dramatically, leading to labor shortages and economic turmoil. With so many succumbing to the disease, it was not uncommon for bodies to be left in the streets. The sheer scale of mortality led to mass graves and even the abandonment of entire towns. And then, there was the psychological toll. The inexplicable and unrelenting nature of the plague led many to question their faith, their leaders, and their understanding of the world. It catalyzed a period of profound religious and social upheaval. The Black Death was an uninvited guest that refused to leave, recurring in waves for centuries. It left an indelible mark on human history, shaping societies and cultures in ways that are still evident today. Imagine living in a world where almost half of your town could be wiped out in a matter of weeks. That was the reality of the Black Death. Leprosy, a disease that turned humans into outcasts. This infamous ailment, also known as Hansen's disease, has a long and storied history. Originating possibly as far back as ancient Egypt, leprosy was a common spectre in the Middle Ages. The disease is characterized by disfiguring skin sores, nerve damage, and muscle weakness that progresses over time. But it's not just the physical symptoms that made leprosy so dreadful. Society's reaction to the disease added another layer of misery. Fear and misunderstanding of leprosy led to sufferers being shunned and isolated, often forced to live on the outskirts of towns or in leprosariums, dedicated institutions for those afflicted. The stigma was so profound that it tore apart families and communities. People afflicted with leprosy were not just battling a physical ailment, but also a social one. Their struggle was not merely against the disease, but also against the fear and prejudice of their fellow man. Leprosy didn't just affect the body, it tore apart families and communities too. Dysentery, the silent killer that could strike at any time. This unassuming disease, often confused with a simple bout of stomach upset, was a deadly force in the Middle Ages. Originating from contaminated food or water, dysentery would strike with debilitating symptoms. Severe diarrhea, dehydration, and fever were the telltale signs of this illness, and it was as relentless as it was ruthless. Now picture this. You're in the middle of a bustling marketplace or a crowded military camp, and suddenly, dysentery strikes. In these conditions, with poor sanitation and close quarters, dysentery spread like wildfire, decimating armies and civilian populations alike. Its impact was profound, crippling societal functions and causing widespread panic. And remember, no one was safe. From the lowliest peasant to the mightiest knight, dysentery was an indiscriminate foe. It was a stark reminder that beneath the armor, beneath the bravado, even the most formidable warriors were human, vulnerable to the ravages of disease. Dysentery, the disease that proved even the mightiest of knights could be brought down by a mere stomach bug. Smallpox, a disease so deadly it was used as a weapon. Now there's a thought to keep you up at night. Smallpox was no stranger to the Middle Ages, and it was as fiendish as they come. Originating thousands of years ago, smallpox was a gift that kept on giving, in the worst possible way. It presented itself with a high fever, a nasty rash, and pustules that covered the body. But the true horror of smallpox wasn't just in its gruesome symptoms. Its real power lay in its ability to decimate populations. Communities were left in ruins as the disease tore through towns and cities, leaving high death rates in its wake. And as if the natural course of the disease wasn't devastating enough, smallpox was even used in biological warfare, turning the tide in battles and changing the course of wars. Smallpox, a disease so terrifying, it changed the course of wars. The sweating sickness, a disease so mysterious we still don't know what caused it. Emerging in the 15th century, it left its victims feverish, achy, and drenched in sweat. And as if that wasn't enough, it had a nasty habit of killing within hours. Talk about a quick exit. The sweating sickness swept through Europe like a tempest, leaving fear and uncertainty in its wake. Society was left reeling, with no idea of where it came from or how to stop it. Theories abound, from hantavirus to a form of anthrax, but none have been proven. What we do know is that it disappeared as mysteriously as it arrived, leaving behind a legacy of terror. Imagine a disease so deadly, so swift, that it could wipe out entire families in a single day. The sweating sickness, a reminder that even with all our knowledge, there are still mysteries to be solved. Anthrax, a disease that could wipe out an entire herd of livestock. Now imagine living in the Middle Ages when your very livelihood depends on those animals. This deadly bacteria, Bacillus anthracis, dates back to ancient times, but it was especially rampant during the medieval era. Anthrax didn't discriminate. It affected both humans and animals, and its symptoms were nothing short of terrifying. High fever, severe abdominal pain, and even bloody diarrhea were common among those unfortunate enough to contract it. But the real horror was in the animals. It could decimate entire herds, leaving farmers helpless and destitute. The impact on society was profound. Livestock were essential for survival, providing not only food but also clothing, and the power to plow fields. The loss of an entire herd could spell disaster for a farmer and his family. Anthrax, the silent enemy of the medieval farmer, a ruthless killer that could bring even the most robust communities to their knees. The Plague of Justinian, a disease so deadly it marked the end of an era. This plague was no ordinary ailment. It was an outbreak of the bubonic plague that swept through the Eastern Roman Empire, taking with it millions of lives during 2 gruesome centuries from the mid-6th to the mid-8th century. Imagine fever, chills, weakness, and swollen lymph nodes, all symptoms of this dreadful disease. It was named after Justinian I, the emperor who, ironically, survived its grip. The Plague of Justinian was not just a health crisis, it was a societal catastrophe. Its deathly toll weakened the Byzantine Empire, leading to its eventual downfall. With a reduced population, the empire struggled to maintain its military and economic might, and the once magnificent Roman Empire crumbled. The Plague of Justinian, a poignant reminder of how a single disease can alter the course of history. The Plague of Justinian, the disease that brought down an empire. Typhoid fever, a disease that spread through the water. Now there's a name that really quenches your thirst, right? Typhoid fever, a bacterial infection that originated in the Middle Ages, was a real party crasher. It was caused by Salmonella typhi bacteria, and it was notorious for its nasty symptoms such as high fever, headache, and abdominal pain. But here's the kicker: unlike some of the other diseases we've talked about, typhoid didn't just show up and leave. No, it liked to stick around and cause long-term complications, like internal bleeding and inflammation of the heart. And how did this unwelcome guest get around? Through contaminated water and food. During the Middle Ages, sanitation wasn't exactly high on the priority list. This lack of clean water and proper waste disposal made the perfect breeding ground for typhoid fever, particularly in crowded urban areas. So the next time you turn on your tap, remember, typhoid fever, a reminder that clean water is a luxury we often take for granted. Malaria, a disease that turned paradise into a nightmare. In the lush, tropical landscapes of the Middle Ages, a deadly predator lurked. Not a beast of fang and claw, but a microscopic parasite delivered by the bite of the Anopheles mosquito. This unassuming little insect was the harbinger of malaria, a disease that wreaked havoc across the balmy paradise. The symptoms: high fever, chills, and an intense headache that made the world seem like a spinning top. And it didn't stop there. In severe cases, malaria led to seizures, coma, or even death. The impact on medieval society, particularly in tropical regions, was immense. Malaria decimated populations, crippled economies, and created a pervasive fear of the mosquito's hum. It shaped the course of history, influenced settlement patterns, and spurred early medicinal advancements. Malaria, the disease that proved even paradise, has its dangers. Even today, it serves as a chilling reminder of how the smallest creatures can cause the greatest devastation. Tuberculosis, the disease that was as common as a cold. Let's take a journey back in time to when this disease, also known as the White Plague, was a regular, uninvited guest in households across the world. Originating as far back as antiquity, tuberculosis was caused by the bacterium Mycobacterium tuberculosis. The symptoms were horrific: chronic cough with blood-tinged sputum, fever, night sweats, and weight loss. It was like a cruel game of tag. No one wanted to be it. The impact of tuberculosis on society was immense. It was pervasive, affecting people from all walks of life, from the lowly peasant to the highest noble. It didn't care if you had a castle or a hovel, it came knocking regardless. The disease had a knack for making everyone feel equally miserable. So, whether you were a king or a commoner, tuberculosis was a constant, unwelcome companion. Tuberculosis, the disease that showed no respect for wealth or status. So, there you have it, the 10 worst diseases you could have found in the Middle Ages. It's quite a list, isn't it? A veritable who's who of maladies that could make even a seasoned knight quake in his iron boots. But let's not end on a note of despair, for as grim as this list may be, it also serves as a testament to just how far we've come. Today, thanks to the advancements in modern medicine, these diseases are either treatable or eradicated. We've decoded the mysteries of the human body, developed vaccines and antibiotics, and learned how to prevent and control outbreaks. Thanks to modern medicine, these diseases are now either treatable or eradicated. But let's not forget the lessons they've taught us, because those who forget history are doomed to repeat it.